Okay. Very good. Okay, so let's begin. We're on Daf Dalet Amud Aleph, and we've been learning about the law of exempting Cheresh, Shoita, V'Katan, and Tumtum, and Androgynous. We've been talking about all these exclusions from the mitzvah of Re'iyah, that the Mishnah had started, the first two lines of the Mishnah, that we had everyone is obligated going to the Beis HaMikdash, except for Cheresh, Shoita, Katan, Tumtum, Androgynous, Nashim, Avadim, Shenim, Shachrarim. So we had a whole list of people that are exempt, and we've been learning all about these different exemptions, in what verse they're learned from, and the source.
You are back to Re'iyah, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's what we've really been talking about. So the Gemara that we learned yesterday, we mentioned about a katan, that there are two types of katanim. There's katan shehigia l'chinuch and katan shelo higia l'chinuch. And the Gemara concludes and says that that's really midrabanan, that really a katan is only obligated rabbinically in chinuch. Otherwise, biblically, a katan is not obligated in mitzvahs, but is obligated mitzad chinuch. But the chinuch is drabanan. So the Gemara initially thought that we're learning it out of a pasuk, and the Gemara said, learning it out of a pasuk, it's rabbinic. And so the Gemara answered, "You're right. Ein hachanami. Ein hachanami means like, yeah, take. You're right. Ein hachanami. That's correct. You are right. It is rabbinic. Ukra asmachta bialma. But the pasuk is what's called an asmachta. Asmachta, it shows a little support for the rabbinic law, that there is like a hint to it in the Torah, but it's rabbinic. So the Gemara wanted to know, so what do we do with this pasuk of kol zechorcha, this extra word, kol zechorcha, which initially we thought was including children? So the Gemara answered that it's kol zechorcha, that it's not actually including. Normally you would think all is including, and here the Gemara says no. The word kol, all, you would seemingly include someone you wouldn't expect, but there's another way of reading it, and that is only someone who can go along with kol zechorcha, only someone who would fit in with them, who would be fitting to go with kol zechorcha. So that's the way the Gemara is learning it, which means it's going to exclude someone. So normally initially we wanted to include katanim. And now the Gemara says, no, it's actually going to exclude. How do you jump from including to excluding? Because we're reading it a little differently, and we're using the word kol to bring out this idea that only someone who could go to the Beis HaMikdash, to the Azara, to the courtyard of the Beis HaMikdash with kol zechorcha, with all of your males, only someone who could go with everyone, but not someone who has such a job that causes them to give off a bad odor because of their work that they do, that it sort of it stains them, it affects them, it makes them have this dirty smell, and they would not be fitting to be able to go with everyone else, and therefore they are exempt.
Rabbi,
there is a pasuk, Rabbi.
Yeah.
Go ahead, David.
Yeah, I was going to just ask, if you're excluding minors because of the various reasons, what about the obligation of the parent, of the adults for the minors? Like the minors are being excluded because they're minors, but what about the obligation on the parents to bring the minors?
So we did explain that there's a certain stage where the parents would be obligated, but it would be rabbinic. So certain minors are exempt and certain minors are obligated. We're talking about going to the Beis Hamikdash 3 times a year. So we said in the Mishnah that there's an argument between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, and what stage of the minor, becomes obligated. But that obligation is a rabbinic obligation.
On the parents or on the child?
So it seems to be a big debate among the commentaries. How does that, is it an obligation on the parent or on the child? So that's a interesting point you bring up. It's something there's a lot of ink that has been spilled on that matter in general about chinuch. The obligations of chinuch is definitely a lot of discussion about it. But the way, I think it was a Rashi in the beginning on the first page, that Rashi over there mentioned, Hitilu chachamim al aviv v'al imay l'chanchay b'mitzvahs. So Rashi says it's an obligation on the parent. The chachamim placed an obligation on both parents. Interesting, on both parents to be machanech the child with mitzvahs. So it sounds like, according to Rashi at least, that it's an obligation on the parent, and that is a certain stage, and below that stage they would be exempt. Now, this doesn't apply to Hakel. Hakel was another story where the Torah itself obligates the parents or the children to come to the mitzvah. The reason why the children have to come is the verse says anoshim noshim b'taf, and so there it's a biblical obligation to bring the children, and there it says litain schar l'meviyehem. So, but that's the mitzvah of Hakel. Again, our Gemara is not now it's not talking about Hakel. It did talk about it earlier, but here the Gemara is talking about the mitzvah of Re'iyah, of going to the Beis Hamikdash 3 times a year, and that mitzvah, Ketanim, are only obligated rabbinically, even when they are obligated. Again, it's a certain stage of their maturity, but that stage would be only rabbinic. Now, the Hakel mitzvah would be a biblical mitzvah. It says it clearly, anoshim nashim v'taf.
Thank you, Rabbi.
So the fact that we exclude those other people is, it's I think it's from the verse v'samachta b'chagecha v'ayita ach sameach. And how can you be misameach when someone
smells
standing next to you reeks of whatever?
Interesting. We'd have to look and see if the commentaries bring that up. The good point, Ezra. Very definitely a interesting point. And but I guess I don't know if that pasuk itself would exempt. In other words, would that be enough of an exemption? You should be happy. So in order for you to be happy, I guess it would be, the Gemara could have maybe chosen that pasuk to use as a source, and then had the limud from that pasuk, and instead the Gemara uses this pasuk because maybe it's adding another element maybe to the mitzvah of going to be Oila Regel. That when you're Oila Regel, when you go to the Beis Hamikdash, even the travel is meant to be amongst multitudes of people. In other words, you're meant to travel in groups. Maybe there's such a concept. Sharing a thought that it's emphasizing the going up to be together with Kol Zechorcha.
Yeah.
So, it has to be. We'd have to find the source for this. Of course, we know that in the time of Elkanah, when he did it to the Mishkan, when he brought the people to the Mishkan, of course, they would go in a big group, bringing going with everyone to the Mishkan, and he was trying to get people involved in spending the holidays in the Mishkan, which was a questionable. It seems like it wasn't so clear if they had an obligation because it was only the Mishkan, it wasn't the Beis Hamikdash. But maybe you see from there such a concept of going together in a group. Here it sounds like the mitzvah was, kol la'alois and kol zechorcha, to go together with everyone, and that would be the mitzvah of traveling together in a group. Let me just see. I might have a Rambam right here. Hold on. So, interestingly enough, the Rambam holds that they are obligated to go to the Beis Hamikdash, and they have to wash themselves off. The Rambam says, "Hamakametz," a person who scrapes and gathers the excrement of the dogs. V'husha malachto lekabetz soyas haklavim. He gathers the dog excrement, and similar to that type of work. La'abed oirais, person who works in the tanner, oila refuah, or for medical work, healing. A person who smelts copper in his in some type of a machatzev shaloi. I don't know, Ben, what is a machatzev? You know?
I didn't follow it. Machatzev?
Yeah, machatzev. That's
half?
No, that's with a
Divided
hay.
in half?
A base, ches tzadik base, machatzev, something to do with a copper smeltering.
It says in the Steinsaltz that he melds MELD copper, and he's
people. Only two. You want
Just one
Oh,
second.
smelting, maybe smelting.
it says that he's
Anyway,
purifying copper from the dross, purifying it from the non-copper, the dregs.
Gotcha. But okay. Anyway, the Rambam adds this word, but machatzev shaloi, the ha'abdonim, and again, these people that work in these. Isn't that like a common word?
Is like digging up and
yeah, like a quarry or something. Like
quarry, right? Quarry.
Isn't that what it means? Yeah.
Yeah. Machzeva is a quarry.
Yeah. Anyway, so he's working in these fields. So afal pi shehein mu'usin mipnei malachton, even though they are disgusting because of their work. So hare elu mataharin gufan umalbushon va'ilin b'chlal yisrael lehirois. They have to purify their body and their clothes, and they go together with all of the Klal Yisrael to make themselves seen. So, interestingly enough, the Rambam here holds that he is obligated. Now, how do you reconcile this Rambam with our Gemara? Our Gemara seems to imply that there's a blanket, they're exempt. They don't have to come. They're blanket exemption. And here, the Rambam says, no, they have to wash themselves off, their clothing, take a shower, a good shower, maybe in tomato juice or something, somehow get that smell, that do some, I don't know, vodka maybe, arak, wash themselves off well, and then they go. So how does this fit? So what's interesting is that the Gemara's source, what is the name of the rabbi who says that they're exempt. What was the name of the rabbi that we just learned in the Gemara that said they are exempt? The makamates, the person who gathers this stuff. What was his name?
Yeah.
Acherim, right? It says Acherim. Acherim means Reb Meir. And the fact that the brisa that we're learning says Acherim Oimrim, so the Rambam, or it's a Mishnah actually. Seems like it's a Mishnah. Nope, it's a brisa. It is a brisa. So the brisa says Acherim Oimrim, that these people are pater mir'iyah. Acherim is Reb Meir. Now, when it says Acherim Oimrim, it sounds like the rabbis argue on that. And if the rabbis argue on that, they would probably obligate the person. And if the rabbis argue on Reb Meir, then the halacha follows the majority. So it would be the rabbis, we would follow the rabbis versus Reb Meir.
Yeah, but when they say in plural, rabbis, it cannot be just Reb Meir.
No, it says Acherim, which is Reb
Yeah,
Meir.
if it says Acherim in plural, it's more than just Reb Meir. Why is it Reb Meir?
No, because it's the title that he was given.
They gave Reb Meir the title Acherim. I'm sure it says it in Isaac's book. I don't have it in front of me,
Okay.
but there's a reason why they gave Reb Meir the title Acherim. I don't recall it at the moment.
Maybe
but
there were
is-
more rabbis, but not as
I don't
known
have
as
it in
Reb Meir.
front of
Oh,
me
okay,
either.
either. Okay.
Wasn't it a story in which there a couple of rabbis or several rabbis got together trying to remove one of the the Yush from his position, and someone got wind of it because he didn't know a particular Gemara or particular Masechta. And so somebody got wind of it, told him about it. And when he was confronted, he was able to give the limud, and as a punishment for those people who tried to remove him, he said that in the Gemara they would be called by particular appellation, so that as a way of not giving them credit for whatever they expounded on. One came back and apologized, and he was reinstated, but the other one did not, and so he still remains in the Gemara as whatever the appellation that he was given.
It sounds like it might be right. I don't remember it well enough to
So you
agree.
mean they said others, but up to now it's only Reb Meir. Maybe somebody else will be included at another time.
Oh,
Nope.
1 second. I just found something else. I found something online. It says some say that the reason he's called Acherim is because he learned Torah from a guy called Acher. In other words, his name was Elisha ben Avuya, but the Gemara called him Acher. So since he learned Torah from Acher, they called him Acherim. And some explain because of a story. Maybe this is 1 second. What is the story? After this famous story where that Reb Meir saved his sister-in-law from she was taken from the government to be she was forced to be like to work in a house of prostitutes, and so Reb Meir saved. He took money and he bribed the guard, and the guard said, "But what am I going to do when they find out? What's the money going to help me if they find?" He said, "Don't worry, you just say Elakad de Reb Meir Aneni," and sure enough, it worked. And whenever they tried to get this guard, he just said Elakad de Reb Meir Aneni. So when the Caesar, the Caesar, heard about Reb Meir's story and how he saved the guard, he commanded that they should put the picture of Reb Meir. They should engrave a form of Reb Meir on the wall, and they put it in the entrance to the city of Rome. And they said whoever sees him should bring him to the king because he ran away. And Reb Meir, they were running out. They were trying to find him. So they once saw him. They tried to run after him, and he entered into a party of goyim. They wanted, and he asked them to bring pig to his table. He asked the waitress. So he stuck his finger into the dish, and he lifted up the finger and he licked a different finger. So they thought he's eating it. They thought he's eating the pig. They said, this can't be Reb Meir. This is Acher. This must be someone else. So they left him. And because of that, he was always known as Acherim, because they said, Acheru, this guy is different. This is not the real Reb Meir who we're looking for. So that's so those are the two reasons that I see why he's called.
Two reasons they trying to explain it.
Why he's called Acherim.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, so bottom line is the Rambam doesn't seem to paskin like this view, which we just read in the Gemara, and the reason is, at least the way the Kislev Mishnah explains it, is because this is a singular view, and the rabbis, it sounds like they argue because it says Acherim Oimrim this, and it sounds like the rabbis argue, and so this is so the Rambam holds that they are obligated.
Well, you're going to get a long, nice bad on Daf Yud Dalet in Chagiga.
Right.
He said there's a long piece on him. He killed 30 a boy and chopped him into 13 pieces, whatever, on Acher. But they don't have a listing in the Sefer I gave you for Acherim.
No, because look under Reb Meir.
I figured that's what it was going to be.
Yeah, look under Reb Meir. In Reb Meir, it'll say he was called Acherim. But I guess we got you going, Isaac.
Well, you got me out of bed, that's for sure. Came back from the surgeon and just listening to fumbling and listening to him going, no, it has to be plural, got me out of bed.
Right.
Why
Rabbi.
didn't the
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah. Yeah.
why
Harold?
why didn't the Chachamim argue specifically in the Mishnah? Acherim Omer this, and the Chachamim argued.
Yeah, so it's an interesting Kesef Mishnah that he's proving that the rabbis argue just because it says Acherim Omer. That, in other words, it would seem like a brisa, maybe the brisa would just say it's stam, and it wouldn't even say Acherim Omer. The fact that it says Acherim Omer implies that someone argued. That's what it sounds like. But the Kesef Mishnah is trying to find an explanation to the Rambam. So this is not the initial understanding. It's based on the Rambam says this. It doesn't seem to fit with our Gemara. Now, there is another interpretation. I do want to give you an alternative interpretation to the Rambam. The reason why the Rambam doesn't paskin like our Gemara is not because another reason, not because the rabbis argue on it, because he learned our Gemara differently. The way he understood our Gemara is while they are dirty, they are exempt from going. But what they need to do is they need to purify themselves and become and clean themselves. And therefore they are really obligated to come, but they are obligated to clean themselves in their state. The way they are not supposed to come. They're not supposed to come in the state they are. That's the way the Rambam learned it. But they really are obligated to come. And when it says Peturim min Hariyah, it really means that they are exempt in their state, and they have to make themselves fit to be able to come. Now, that shot is from the Mahari Korkus. The problem is it doesn't fit so perfectly with the wording, but the Mahari Korkus over here on the Rambam base, he says this, that it says Keturin, it means while they are in their disgusting state, they are not allowed to enter. And also, if it's impossible, if the point is, if they can't get out of their disgusting smell, then they would actually be exempt. So now the Mishnah doesn't mention these cases, and it could be that's the reason why the Rambam holds that it's not a blanket rule, because the Rambam is saying that the Mishnah talked about cases that are totally exempt. These cases, very often, they can cleanse themselves to the extent that they won't have this smell coming from their body. Again, they spend 18 hours a day in this disgusting dealing with the dirty, with dirt, and they didn't, in those days they didn't have gloves, all these type of gloves and things, and so their hands, there would be a smell that would come probably get on their body here and there, so things would that smell would take effect. Now, is it an automatic thing that they can't cleanse themselves ever from it? No. So it depends. If they are able to cleanse themselves, they are obligated in coming, but there are possibly cases where they can't, so they would be exempt, but it's not a blanket rule. So the fact that our Mishnah doesn't mention it, and this is an interesting point, the fact that the Mishnah doesn't mention it is a question. Why doesn't our Mishnah mention these exemptions? And the answer is because it's not a blanket exemption. This is a exemption that applies in certain cases. David, you wanted to say something.
Yeah. Well, one thing, everything you just said is summarized in the Steinsaltz, but then they add, according to the commentaries, and it says the source is the Gaonim. They explain that these bad odor people are exempt from the mitzvah of appearance, not for the good of the general public, but for their own honor. It would be insulting for them were they to ascend to the temple with everyone keeping their distance from them. Consequently, they're exempt from this obligation. And it just says Gonim, it doesn't say who.
So when you learn the Gemara, you could understand it both ways. So the Goinim explain it that it's more on the part of the people than on the part of these workers than on the part of the people. Interesting that it's that they have to be fit to go with everyone else, and if they're not fit to go with everyone else, well, I guess the Gemara doesn't really say if it's for their honor or for everyone else's honor. The Gemara just leaves it vague and says if they're able to go with everyone else. The fact is they aren't able to go. These people are not able to go with everyone else. So whether it's because they're going to run away or they're, other people are going to separate from them. So the Goinim say these people are going to separate from the rest of the people on purpose. Is that what it says, or just that they shouldn't feel?
No, it says that the general public is for their own honor of the person, of the worker, not for the public, because it would be so insulting for them that everybody would keep their distance from them. Therefore, they're exempt.
Right.
Because they would be so, dishonored.
So it's a concept of the law of Hashem not wanting to cause embarrassment. That's why he's exempting them.
Right.
They shouldn't be embarrassed.
Really?
That's the reason for this exemption. Just 1 second, Moshe. Ezra has his hand up. He's been waiting patiently. Yes, Ezra.
But if we are in fact saying that Acherim is Rav Meir, then shouldn't it say Acherim Omer in the singular?
It is interesting. I guess we wanted to call him Acher, but we can't because his Rebbe is Acher, so we call him Acherim. Once you say Acherim, and the Gemara is leaving it vague with that term Acherim, and so it basically has to say, to fit the grammar of Acherim, it has to say Omrim. But I don't think it means
that makes it, Rabbi, that makes it even more vague, because Acherim could also be exactly what Ben said.
As a result, the Nasi instituted that the teachers of Rab Meir and Rab Nosson would not be attributed to them by name.
That's
Rab
the story
Meir
I was
would
talking
be
about.
referred to as others, Acherim, and Rab Nosson would be, there are those who say, and that's the Gemara in Horios.
So there is already two rabbis.
Okay, thank you,
Meir and
Ezra.
another
Okay,
rabbi.
fine, very good. So it had something to do with them embarrassing another one of the rabbis.
The Nasi, yeah, the story was very. They wanted to remove him, and the way they wanted to remove him was to bring up a particular Gemara that he was weak in.
Right.
And somebody had overheard the discussion, and so he went that night, spoke to him, and they learned it together. And when the next day was brought up, he discussed it eloquently to the point where the other two were embarrassed. So what was there going to be their punishment is exactly what Isaac was reading. It was Rabbi Natan went and apologized, and he was reinstituted. The other one did not apologize.
Okay, thank you, Ezra. Okay, very nice, very nice. So there seems to be a few explanations then for it, and so the fact that Reb Meir is called Acherim, it means others say, but it uses that term of Oimrim, because once it uses the fact that it uses this plural of others say, so it has to use the plural others.
So you have two rabbis that studied with Acher, so they both would.
No, that's not what it means. No. You're putting two of these explanations together in one. The one thing was he's a student of Acher. He learned a lot from Acher. They called him Acherim. That's one explanation.
Yeah.
But the other explanation is based on there are three explanations. Or the other one was based on that they said Acher, this guy is not Reb Meir, so they called him Acherim. And the third reason is this Gemara in Horios, where it talks about, I thought it was a dream. Does it say it was a dream that an angel came to him, or it was a person? It was a chavrusta, someone who was it, Isaac, that came and taught him that Masechta?
I don't see anything about a Masechta.
Taharis. What area did the Nasi not know? What was it? What field was it? I remember it vaguely. I don't remember.
What page was it on, Isaac?
Where in the same 380?
No, in Horios.
In Horios.
Yeah.
13b.
It's towards the end.
I'll go get it.
Where he was appointed Bezdin, Rav Nosson.
Mm-hmm.
While he's looking it up, it says that the Kesef Mishnah says that Acherim indicates that this is the opinion of an individual sage, which is not accepted by the rabbis and the halachas according to the majority opinion.
Right, that's the Kesef Mishnah.
Yeah, and also it says the Kesef Mishnah says, and also this Rabbi Yosef Kirkus
Kirkus, yeah,
says
he gives
that the ruling of Acherim applies only when these people are covered in filth, but once they clean themselves up, they're considered like everyone else.
Yeah. Okay, fine. That's we said that. Okay. Okay, great. Thank you, David. Yeah, you got some good stuff over there.
Rabbi,
Just 1 second. Here, this is the story from Hurriyas. Rabbi Yechanan says this Mishnah was taught during the days of Rav Shimon ben Gamliel. Rav Shimon ben Gamliel was a Nasi, Rav Meir the Chacham, and Rav Nassan was the deputy Nasi. When Rav Shimon ben Gamliel was there, everyone would arise before him. Rav Meir, Rav Nassan would enter, everyone would arise before them. Shimon Gamliel said, shouldn't there be a conspicuous distinction between me and them? And Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel instituted the provisions delineated in this brisa that distinguished the Nasi and his subordinates. And that day, when Rabbi Shimon Gamliel instituted these provisions, so Reb Meir and Reb Nassan were not there. The following day, when they came, they saw that the people did not stand before them as the matter was typically done. So they said, "What is this?" So they said, the people told them that Reb Shimon Gamliel instituted this. So Reb Meir, Reb Nassan said, Reb Meir said to Reb Nassan, "I am the Chacham, you're the deputy. Let us devise a matter and do him as he did to us. So let us say to him to teach us Uktzin." Yeah, Uktzin, which is Tum and Tahara. So which he doesn't know. So and once it is clear that he did not learn this tractate, so he won't have anything to say, and we will say to him, who can express the mighty acts of Hashem shall make all his praises heard. And it's a pasuk in Tehillim. For whom is it becoming to express the mighty acts of Hashem? One who is capable of making all of his praises heard. And if you don't know this tractate, then you should be removed. So we'll remove him from this position. I will become deputy Nasi, and you will be the Nasi. This is what Reb Meir said to Reb Nassan. So Reb Yaakov ben Korshi heard them and said, "Oy vey, it's going to become a humiliation for Reb Shimon Gamliel." So he sat behind the aliyah, the attic of Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, and he explained Uktzin, and he studied it and repeated it and studied it, repeated it. And Reb Shimon Gamliel said, "What is going on here? That something's happening in the Beis Medrash." He suspected maybe something's they're doing so he concentrated and learned Uktzin. So the following day, so Reb Meir did his plan. He said, "Teach us, let the master come and teach us Uktzin." And he began. He stated that he taught. After he completed, he said to them, "If you had not studied, if I had not studied, you would have had humiliated." So Shimon Gamliel commanded those present that they expelled Reb Meir, Reb Nassan from the study hall, and Reb Meir, Reb Nassan would write their difficulties on a scrap of. Mute everyone. So Reb Meir, Reb Nassan would write their difficulties on a scrap of paper and throw it into the Beis Medrash, and those difficulties that were resolved, and those that were not resolved, Reb Meir, Reb Nassan would write the solutions on a scrap of paper, throw it into the Beis Medrash. Reb Yossi said, "How is it that the Torah is outside and we are inside?" Shimon Gamliel said to them, "Let us admit them into the study hall, but we will penalize them. They will not cite halacha in their names." So they called Reb Meir Acherim, and they called Reb Nassan Yesh Oimrim.
But it doesn't sound like the personality of the great Reb Meir, who, everyone extols the virtues of, that he would stoop to this level.
To embarrass the Nasi?
Yes, Rav Shimon ben Gamliel.
Yeah, but
you have to understand.
The other one embarrassed him because he wanted to make that distinction.
But that's Nakama.
It is an interesting Gemara. There's no question about it. And deserves to be looked into. The exact how
So
the commentaries explain it.
Rabbi, why can't I say that Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel also had haughtiness and pride because of what he did?
So obviously they didn't have what we think of haughtiness and arrogance. Obviously it's on their, they're trying to stick up for the honor of Torah, each of them. So Rav Shimon Gamliel obviously thinks that the Nasi should be shown more honor than the others, and because of to honor Hashem. In other words, all their honor is an honor for Hashem, really. So obviously they're, that's there's a reason that they're doing this, and it's not, this is not like kindergarten students, fighting over a little toy or something.
Rabbi, if the Chumash is very straightforward and shows us all the warts and everything else of our Avraham, Yitzchok, and Yaakov, why can't the Gemara do the same thing about our Rabbeim?
So, if we were dealing with the Chumash, little kids fighting over something, maybe it would. But even in the Chumash, we know there's a lot deeper meanings to these, to the happenings, and they weren't just, it wasn't as we just read it on surface level. Even the stories in the Chumash, they were giving psak din. I mean, this was Shimon and Levi were making a verdict of what was the city of Shechem guilty, and Reuven and Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, they were deciding about what is Yosef considered a roidif, because Yaakov is going to curse us, and we're going to end up probably dying if he curses us. They had halachic ideas behind their what they did. It's not on the surface level. Maybe Cain and Abel, you could say, there was they were just simply fighting, but and even Abel, you don't get to see the greatness of him until you read the Medrash. But even the stories of Chumash, it's not the way just the surface level is. That's just it's the way it's written. Of course, there's the whole oral understanding behind it. Yes, Ben. I'm sorry, Ezra. What did you want to say?
No. What I'm saying is that even the Rabbanim criticized, Avraham, Yitzchok, and Yaakov in certain situation, basically saying he shouldn't have done it. This was not the right way to do, to go about it. And so, therefore, I mean, for us, they're lessons as to things that that we learn from them, of things not to do as well as things to do. So here, I look at this in the same context, that certain things being said. I mean, I'm not the only one who's made the comments when they've read this part of Horayot, that someone is doing something because he felt that he was being slighted because of his position, and so therefore he took steps in order to make it not happen. Why couldn't Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel go to these two people and say, because they weren't there, tell them ahead of time, this is what the situation will be, and this is the reasons why it's going to be this way. Whereas, having them being embarrassed when nobody stands up for them, and then have somebody basically say, oh, because the rules got changed and you weren't there when the rules got changed.
So I hear you. In other words, you're saying that there was it wasn't done in the right way. There was a miscommunication there where they should have had advanced knowledge. Okay, I hear what you're saying. In other words, you're not saying that it was just little kids fighting over kavod, but there was a miscommunication there, and there should have been more communication. There should have been more communication, I guess, would be the way to word it.
As a minimum, I guess I would say.
Yeah. But it could be that maybe Rav Shimon Gamliel felt they would never have agreed to it. I don't know. It might be discussed. It could be the commentaries talk about that issue. But there's definitely a lesson to be learned, from this from the stories. There's no question about it. The only question is how how to learn what to learn from the lesson. And obviously it's not teaching us anything about little simple petty arguments.
Rabbi,
yeah, no, definitely what you're saying is correct, that there's for sure a lesson. Yes, David.
I remember learning a Gemara that said that if the student knows that the teacher doesn't know the answer to the question, he's not allowed to ask the teacher the question.
Right. So that's what this Gemara is based on. It's on that teaching. If they go back in that Gemara over there in Horiyos, it mentions these type of things, that the laws of asking a question and honoring a teacher and so on. But the way the Gemara ends, the way that story ends, is that they penalized these two rabbis, Reb Nosson and Reb Meir. And so Reb Nosson was Yeshomrim and Reb Meir was Acherim. Now, Reb Meir, Reb Nosson were shown a message in their dreams. Oh, so there is a dreams thing here. Go appease Reb Shimon ben Gamliel. So Reb Nosson went. Reb Meir did not go. He said, matters of dreams are insignificant. So when Reb Nosson went, Reb Shimon Gamliel said to him, although the belt, which means the importance of your father, was effective in enabling you to become the deputy Nasi, will it render you Nasi as well? And that's the way the Gemara. It ends off. Years later, Reb Yehuda HaNasi taught Reb Shimon, his son, that Acherim said, Ilo haya tmura, if it was tmura, it would not be sacrificed. Reb Yehuda HaNasi's son said to him, who is the sages whose water we drink, but whose names we do not mention? So Reb Yehuda HaNasi said to him, they are people who sought to abolish your honor and the honor of your father's house. So he said to his son, their love, as well as their hatred and their envy, is long ago perished. This is a verse in Ecclesiastes and Koheles. So therefore, there's no problem in mentioning their name. Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi said to him, but it also, so that's the son said to the father, like, why should we, it's the hatred is perished. It's why can't we mention the name? So Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi said to him, but it also says the enemy are come to an end. The wasted places are forever. So even though they died, but there is still, the desolation is still remains, and their names should not be mentioned. So Rabbi Shimon said to his father, these matters where their actions were effective, these matters apply in a case where their actions were effective. In the case of the sages, their actions were not effective. So Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi then taught him, the sages said in the name of Reb Meir, this law. So he listened to his son, and he ended up saying he ended up saying in the name of Reb Meir. So Rava said even Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi was humble, taught the sages said in the name of Reb Meir, but did not say directly Reb Meir said. So he still kept up the didn't exactly say Reb Meir. He said the sages said in the name of Reb Meir. Anyway, so that's the end of Horiyos over there. What it seems like, and I have to look into this, but maybe why did Reb Meir get the name Acherim and Reb Nosson get the name Yeshomrim? So it seems like maybe the reason why they gave Reb Meir the name Acherim is because of those two reasons that I mentioned earlier. So in other words, maybe this is the main story, like Ezra said, and maybe those other reasons are why specifically was Reb Meir chosen to be called Acherim? And because they said, you know what, Reb Meir's teacher is Acher, let's call Reb Meir Acherim. Or the Reb Meir had that story where the Romans called him Acher. He's someone different. He's not himself. So they said, you know what, Reb Meir, we're not going to give him his name. We'll call him a nickname Acherim. So that would be possibly maybe how to put all the reasons together. Yes, Ben.
I think that he didn't want anybody to mention their names, but he also didn't want them both to be grouped in the same group, because later they separated and didn't do the same. Like Nathan went back and apologized, and he didn't. So, but he gave him a nomenclature, to call him Acherim, and the other one
Nomenclature.
Nomenclature.
You don't hear English words like that from him usually, but that's good.
What does that word mean?
It's time to learn.
Okay, very good. So anyway, getting back, so we just learned the Rambam over here. Try to reconcile the Rambam with the Gemara, and then we had those two explanations, and we also heard from David beautiful insight into the fact that the reason, the purpose of this exemption is really to give respect. They shouldn't be embarrassed. These people, they shouldn't have the embarrassment of being excluded and pushed, and people don't want to stand next to them, so they shouldn't have that embarrassment. Okay, so now we're up to the next Gemara. The next Gemara says, "Noshim ba'avadim sheinam reshuchbarim." Let me tell you where we're starting. We are on the second wide line. Noshim ba'avadim sheinam reshuchbarim. It says women are exempt and servants that are not freed. And what this means is that the exemptions from people to be oila regel are numerous. We had a whole list of them in the Mishnah. And so now we're going to talk about the Nashim and Avadim, women and slaves, that why they're exempt from going to the Beis HaMikdash 3 times a year and bringing these karbanos and so on, bring the carbon oila, or going to the Beis HaMikdash. So the Gemara says, Bishleim and Nashim Kidam. It's understood women are exempt because the reason why women are exempt is because it's because it says Zachor.
You're males, because it says you're males.
Exactly. Thank you, David. Because it says, Zachor, you're males, and that excluded Nashim. And Ella Avadim Minolan. But why does it say Avadim? Well, I mean, why is Avadim exempt? Excuse me. Why are slaves exempt from going to the Beis HaMikdash? It says you're males. I understand women are exempt, but what about slaves? Slaves are males. So the Gemara says, Rav Huna says, Amakra, the pasuk says, the verse says, El Pnei Ha'adon Hashem, to the face, or in front of the master Hashem, the master Hashem. Now, what does this mean? That only someone who has one master has to go. Where do you go to be Ola Regel? It says El Pnei Ha'adon Hashem, to the face of the master Hashem. It means that everyone has to go to their to our master. But someone who has 2 masters, he's exempt. In other words, he has a personal master. He's got to serve his master, and he has to serve Hashem. So, Misha Ein La Yalam Adain Echad, only someone who has one master, he has to go to Hashem for the holidays, 3 holidays. Yotza Zeh, that excludes this person. Sheyesh La Yadain Acher, he has another master. So that's the Gemara's answer of why is a slave exempt from being Oila Regel. So Gemara asks, Halam Kra, why do we need a verse to prove this? Michdi kol mitzvah sheha isha chayaves ba. Let's see. Michti. Any mitzvah that a woman is obligated in, eved chayav ba, a slave is obligated, because slaves have the same obligations as women. Eino eved chayav ba. I'm sorry. Kol mitzvah she'ein ha'isha chayaves ba. Any mitzvah that a woman is not obligated, ein ha'eved chayav ba. A slave is not obligated. The Gemara la me'isha. We have a similar concept that we spoke about earlier with Hakel. We had two words that are similar. It's called Gzeir Shava. And you connect the laws that it says at one case to the laws that it says about the other case, because there's a teaching that we have a tradition that we're supposed to connect these two laws because of a certain wording in both of these cases have the same word. So the same thing applies with a slave and a woman, that a woman has certain exemptions and a slave has similar exemptions, because we connect the two laws. We connect the laws that it says here to the laws that it says there. It's called the Gezeira Shava. So the word in the Torah is law, that it says law in the case of a woman, and it says law in the case of a slave. And so we connect the two laws. So if a woman is exempt from going to the Beis HaMikdash, that should automatically exempt a slave. So the Gemara answers that Amar Ravina says, that the reason why our pasuk is needed is not for a regular slave, because a regular slave is exempt if a woman is exempt. But what about a slave that's not fully a slave? A slave that's half free? A slave that's half free, that slave, you would think, is not in the category of a regular slave. And maybe they should be obligated in being a regel. And so the pasuk comes and tells us this special pasuk that it says only someone who has one master, not another master, only he would be, only someone who has one master is obligated, but someone who has another master would be exempt. And so that's the statement of Rava and Ravina, excuse me. And we did learn a little about this earlier, about someone who's half a slave and half free, that he would be considered exempt. And of course, this was not the final conclusion. The final conclusion was that a person who's half a slave, half free is obligated. But nevertheless, the Mishnah, the Mishnah stayed. In other words, there's a Mishnah Rishona. It was the first way it was learned, the final way it was learned. And I'm just going to take an extra minute or two and let's finish off this little piece so that we can get to the two dots. If you don't mind, I'm going to take from your time for another 2 minutes. Dekanami diktani. The Gemara says that this is also hinted to. It seems to be meduyak. It seems to fit with the wording, since it says nashim, women, in avadim she'enim meshachrarim. And it says, and slaves that haven't been freed. My she'enim meshachrarim. Why would it say slaves that haven't been freed? Why would you add that? Slave that hasn't been freed. That's like not really. It's not necessary to say those words. So if it meant that they haven't been freed at all, listen, they have Adam Stammer, let it just say slaves, right? Because otherwise those extra words are redundant. Obviously, a slave is someone who hasn't been freed. So Ella Lab Ella rather Lav Shein Meshukaron Lagamri. Ella Lav Shein Meshukaron Lagamri must mean that they're not completely freed, but they are partially free. And what is that? Misha Chetzi is talking about someone who's half freed. He had two owners, and one of the owners freed him. The other owner did not free him. Therefore, it's a clear amount of person who's a half a slave. So we see from the wording that it must be referring to someone who's partially a slave but partially free. And such a person needs to be exempt from the fact that he has an additional owner, master, and the fact that he has an additional master exempts him, according to this original teaching called the Mishnah Rishona, that he would be exempt. Now, the final conclusion of the Mishnah is Hakol Chayavin Bere'iyah, at least one way of learning it was that includes someone who's half free, half slave, half free. He is actually obligated in Riyah, but that has to do with the fact that we free him, that the other owner is going to be obligated to free him, and therefore he would be considered to have one owner now, because the owner is really Hashem, because the other owner has to free him. So now he falls into the category of having one owner, and therefore he would be free. He is obligated in being Oila Regel. So that's the conclusion of this Gemara. I want to wish you all a very happy